Here,
So.
hold on a sec.
An elegant weapon.
We got to make it official and all.
All right.
Don't we, kids? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an Elegant Weapon episode 396. My name is J.M. Clark, J the Jedi Ross Jedi J, and it's so wonderful to have all you beautiful babies hanging out here with us tonight in the High Walker studio. It's an exciting evening, conversation a long time coming, and a bit of an appropriate one for a couple of reasons. Kids, hanging out with me tonight, the one, the only, Mr. Richard Pace.
Hey, how you
Hello,
doing?
Richard. Thanks so much for hanging out, man. It's so good to have you here and see your smiling face as we were just chatting about.
Yeah. Hey, 396, is that the number you said?
396. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. So you're promoting your 400th yet?
Oh, hold on one sec. Oh, there we go. Sorry, say again.
So are you going to promote your 400th soon?
Here's the thing about my 400th is I'm waiting on confirmation of the guest.
I hear you.
So I've got two ideas and both work pretty well. I have a guest that I don't want to spoil because it may not happen, but if it does happen, it'll be a crazy, crazy cool 400th episode. And if
I can't see George Lucas saying no.
Hey, we're not far off from that. I'll give you that much. I'm so tempted, but trust me, when you mention that name, it's not far off at all, which is very exciting. And if it doesn't happen for my it was supposed to happen before the pandemic. But this individual actually literally got stuck in China. Because I had just met them December before last, so just over a year ago. And I had met this individual and got to have dinner. And then we planned it out. And I was going to go down because this guy lives in Toronto, and I was going to go and interview and do a talk on the podcast live because that's always most fun. And he was going on a trip to China. And he's like, well, when I get back from China, we'll do it up. And I was like, sweet. And then literally like a week, he left for China. A week later, chaos hit. And he was stuck there for like, I think months. And it never went down. So, the reconnect is happening and I hope we can pull it off. If not, I might just kind of do like one of them fun retrospective, have some of the usual zanies who have been on the show over the years, pals and friends to
revisit your first episode and
just,
the highlight since.
What's weird? A lot of people will talk about it too, is the first 6 episodes of this podcast are missing. And what happened was I used to have a co-host for the first 70 episodes. I actually started this show with a friend, and he left the show, and unfortunately he passed away. And access to those first 6 episodes was unfortunately lost with him. And so they're just in the ether, man. So you have to start with an Elegant Weapon episode 7, which was 10 years ago this week. So you are basically my 10th anniversary guest, Richard. So
hi,
it's pretty exciting, man. It started just me and my buddy, Rob Thibodeau. Hello, sir. Fellow Hamiltonian, which is kind of cool.
Hello, Rob.
And it started off just me and my friend bullshitting in the basement, smoking doobs and talking about Star Trek and comics and Star Wars. And then I was already going to Comic-Cons before that. And then I was at the Comic-Cons and I was like, why aren't I talking to these people, and doing interviews? And then it started there. And you've seen my face running around the trenches ever since,
That's right. I think the last time we saw each other was at Chicago.
Dude.
And we were talking about that was probably going to be the last con of the year. And it was. You
were iffy about, was it Emerald City?
Seattle. Yeah.
It was Seattle, because we were there and I remember at your table and we're talking and, we were worried about it, but not in any kind of, we didn't have any kind of thoughts or conversation about it coming to this,
Well, okay, to be honest, remember when all those movies about pandemics came out around 2000?
Yeah.
There was a lot of books about them too. And I read a few of them. And apparently I read one of the same books that George W. Bush read when he started the pandemic response unit that Obama expanded.
Okay.
So I was trying not to look like what was it, Chicken Little running around, the sky's falling.
Right. Yeah.
I was absolutely convinced that Chicago was going to be the last con, that Seattle was going to be canceled. There would be no cons for the year. And I was thinking all the way back to the Spanish flu at the beginning of last century.
Right.
And how it lasted years.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, we're looking at about a year of this. And knowing it doesn't prepare you for it.
Not at all. You were already fist bumping by then.
Yeah. Well, elbowing.
Yeah. Yeah. Either or.
Yeah. It was a joke then, but I was already, it's like I wore a mask on the flight back.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow. You were on top of that shit.
The bag of masks I bought at a pharmacy near my hotel were the only masks I was able to get for almost a month.
Wow.
Yeah. So I bought like a 50 pack at what's the pharmacy that gives you the receipts that are like 10 feet long?
Shoppers?
No, in the States. CVS?
Oh yeah, CVS. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So I bought a pack of 50 masks from CVS. And the cashier was like looking at me like, why is this guy buying like Tylenol and 50 masks? And I'm thinking, I got a flight to catch. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, because I was lined up too. I was lined up for Calgary.
Yeah.
Because this was SourcePoint's big year. And that month that I saw you at C2E2 was also Fan Expo Vancouver.
Yeah.
So, and I had done another little show in Michigan called Astronomicon. I shouldn't even call it little. It's more mid-size, but it's a super cool, fun, like horror kind of show. And but then we went out to Fan Expo and just crushed it. I sold literally everything on the table, Richard. Like I gave the duffel bag I had, I gave it to the publishers beside us so they could take their excess home, because I was like, literally, I didn't have a single fucking thing on the tablecloth. And I was so stoked because I was like, okay, Vancouver likes what we're doing and stuff. And then it was supposed to be Calgary, and down came the hammer. It was
my art rep, I had ordered like 6 boxes of Second Coming trades to sell at cons. Last year I was supposed to do around 12, 15 conventions.
Oh, the timing for you, that sucks, because that was after all the hoopla that happened with the book, and then the book finally comes out and everybody loves it, and then you can't even be giving it to them personally. It's sad.
I went through, I think, a whole box in Chicago. I don't know. I think that's like 40 copies. I'm not sure how many trades fit in the box. I blew through a whole box. And I was actually thinking, okay, well, after Seattle, I might have to place another order with my publisher, because Seattle's always bigger for me than Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled. I think the first person who did so publicly was Jim Zub.
Mm-hmm.
He announced he was canceled, but I already reached out to Mike Negan from Reed Pop and said, look, this is looking too scary. Then my art rep said he wasn't going. And then it was just like, the sky, it was literally like people were just dropping out like crazy. And that was it.
Yeah. I think Jim recently reposted or shared his memory of his post from that. Didn't we see that recently?
Yeah.
It's so weird, because when I think back to that show, it seems like pretty fresh memories. Like it doesn't seem so long ago that I was at that show, but now when you look at what we've been through, like through the year, it's crazy. Like,
well, this last year's a blur. I mean, it's everything. How can so little happen in so short a time and make it feel like everything happened? Does that make sense? Yeah. But it's like lockdown after Toronto. We're the ping pong lockdown.
Yeah.
In the middle of the world. Because we don't really ever do lockdowns. Although if you saw the news today, they're calling for another stay-at-home order because Ford's last lockdown order is a joke.
Oh yeah, it makes no sense. Like the logistics of everything have been crazy, and I try to get a pulse on it because, you read what you read in the news and the media, and you see the numbers, and you can get the official numbers from whichever area you're looking, whether it's here or in the States. But also, on this show, I talk to a lot of people who are in tons of different areas. So getting a read on it, it's weird because some areas may have a rep for being okay, and then I'll talk to one person who's like, "Oh no, it's a mess here." And
It's a mess. Australia's fine.
New Zealand, I think, is
some of the Pacific Rim is fine.
Yeah,
because they know how to lock down.
Right.
The upshot is, so for all the idiots who are running around saying, "Oh, it's just the flu," it's just the flu. No, it isn't, clearly. But on top of that, because of everyone doing the safety measures, we had a record low year of actual flu.
Right. Yeah.
So now I'm just going to wear a mask whenever I'm traveling or I'm at the gym when gyms reopen.
Right. Yeah,
we have to wear a mask. Why risk it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like no one needs to see my face.
Well, it's been I don't think people mind that much. I think it's always been common in certain Asian countries, like in China and stuff. Whenever you have a mask, it's just or a cold, it's just polite to wear a mask, right? Like, it makes sense. I was listening to this comedian today doing a great bit that she had written before the pandemic about how gross shaking hands actually is. And, the way she was laying it out, I was like, it's kind of true. Like, how many germs, but at the same time, we don't want our immunity system, like our immune systems to completely not be able to handle anything. Right.
Well, I think the world we live in, we're just going to be exposed to germs no matter what.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is there have been certain people where you look at them and you shake their hand and you kind of go, are they the type of person that actually wash their hand after the bathroom?
Right.
I don't know. Right.
Yeah. Or even how well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
how bad was the bathroom?
After last year, we all know how to wash your hands much better.
I mean, well, I was thinking about it, at these shows, man, at the Chicago and like New York, like, Fan Expo, yes, but as much as the people do have a good idea of how big a show can get through Fan Expo, all the people in Toronto, you still have not experienced anything until you've stepped foot into New York Comic Con.
Yes.
It's just, sure, Toronto's very proud. We've got the third biggest, and it is huge. It's enormous. It's amazing, but New York is another planet, and people don't quite get it. And the washrooms there, like, I've seen people sharing like stalls and sharing like sinks and stuff. You know what I mean? And
you look over and go, wow, that's a remarkable penis you have there.
Right? Like, I was in line. Here's a good story. A New York Comic Con bathroom story is I was in line, but it was more of a mob, right? And I couldn't get into the fucking washroom at all. And, I may be 20 people back in this big crowd. And who comes walking out of the washroom but Ken Lashley? Right? So Ken Lashley comes walking out of the washroom, and I know Ken, and he knows me, and he sees me. And he's like, Jay. And I'm like, hey, man. And he opens his arms. And it was like spreading the Red Sea, man. Like, he just went like this for a hug, and like this giant crowd of people just had to disperse because, he's a big guy, right? Are we frozen? Did I freeze?
Oh,
we there? We okay? Sorry. If that happens, just give me 5 seconds. For some reason, the internet, I don't know, it's raining and stormy. Maybe the internet connection.
Probably. Yeah. So Ken, last I saw you were doing the Hulk.
Okay. Ken Lashley comes out of the bathroom, and I'm like, hey, and he's like, hey, and he opens his arms wide to give me one of his giant monster Ken Lashley hugs. Yeah. And he just parts that mob like the Red Sea. He just just disperses the whole thing. Gives me like this giant hug, and then I was able to kind of slip under him after he hugged me, and everybody's like, oh, Ken Lashley. So I was able to use that Ken hug to slide around and skip like 30 people and get into the bathroom, right? So
Smart.
Yeah, I owe Ken for that love. So Ken, thank you so much, sir, because
last year in New York, they gave us our own bathroom.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, there's a press bathroom, which is usually not packed, but it's way up top at those. Yeah. They keep it like in those top areas, I guess, so you can take cool pictures on the way down or something like that. I don't know.
Ours was in the loading dock area.
Okay,
so we had to walk to the back of Artist Alley and go through a little door, with these massive like warehouse thing and like trucks and stuff, and a security guard sitting there looking incredibly bored.
Oh.
But it was like everyone used it, men and women use it, and it was like everyone waiting in line there. But it was a lot better than having to use the general populace.
Oh yeah, that shouldn't happen. Hello, Chad Park. How you doing, buddy? So through this pandemic, you mentioned the gyms. This is something that has distressed both you and I. So
Yes.
we've never talked about this before. We just kind of figured it out through this pandemic and seeing our social media posts. Oh, hey, Richard wants to go to the gym too. Have you always been a gym goer? Was that part of your regular routine before the pandemic?
Yeah. I'm a stress eater.
Okay.
So during this last lockdown, I put on like 7 billion pounds. But there's that gap last summer where when they reopened gyms for essentially a couple months.
Yep.
I was going every day with my son, and that's
awesome.
Yeah, and that was great for both our stress management, because living in a pandemic is stressful if you're smart.
Mm-hmm.
And I managed to beat off pretty much all the pandemic pounds I put the first lockdown. But we've been shut down since what, November now?
At least, yeah, just before Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, it was late November when they did the shutdown. Literally had gone back to my regular gym for like a week and got shut down.
Yeah, I got back into mine for like 2 weeks, and it was actually nice. My gym wasn't charging. Like, even though like when they were open when they could only have 10 people at a time, they didn't charge. So they just started again this month, and they sent out this email, and they like, look, I know we're going into lockdown and this sucks, but we have to start charging because we have rent to pay. And we're really sorry, but I don't think anybody cared, because like, you just gave us like 3 months free gym use, even though it was hard to get in, but I was there every morning with my phone and the app, because you got to book through the app at my gym. And every morning I'm just waiting. I'm fucking waiting there. Right. And I finally what I figured out? Your phone is faster off your data than Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So if you are doing something like booking tickets or booking a gym, make sure you're not on Wi-Fi. You will not be as fast as someone else, right? So that once I figured that out, I started booking every morning, and I got in for like 2 weeks because I had switched, right? You saw my whole thing. I lost all the weight and was doing all the hiking. So phase 2 was going to be Captain America, and I was going to bulk up and see if I could put some muscles on. And then a week into that, I'm feeling good. I was ready to up my weights and stuff. And then boom, no, not again. Don't do anything. But,
and working out at home sucks.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst because I don't have a rack either, right? So it's not safe. Yeah.
It's like when I was a little kid, I'd work out with anything. It's like, oh, look, a heavy bottle full of liquid. I'll do curls with it.
Right.
But here I am, 53, and I'm like with dumbbells, and I'm like, this is the wrong environment. My TV's right there.
Right. Yeah. It's not fun.
I just can't seem to get the intensity.
Well, you got to give me your perspective, because I'm very lucky in that my day job keeps me outside all day, and it keeps me active, and it keeps me from getting cabin fever. And I know a lot of artists. I know a lot of professional artists who have been in their one spot for the past year in their home or apartment, especially in the city, a place that can feel very enclosing, never mind being in a Toronto apartment. And, you draw all day, and like, what's it like, man, for you? Like, have there been moments of like where you find yourself walking around your apartment in your underwear with a tinfoil hat, like singing songs to yourself? Like, has it got that bad?
Well, that was before the pandemic, but now it's not fun. No, it's that last year was like, I went into the lockdown thinking I'm going to be fine. I even adopted a dog, a puppy,
right?
At the time, and that turned into a problem. But my day, even though I work at home, my day was like gym, work. Most days I'd go for like a mid-afternoon walk, grab a coffee at the Starbucks, and walk around the chapters while I drank it, and then walk back to the studio and work some more. And so at first I was thinking, well, I work at home all the time, I'm not going to have a problem. Not realizing, well, no, going out to the gym is not working at home. Popping out midday for like a little like walk around a bookstore or picking up lunch somewhere is not staying at home. And not being free to go everywhere I wanted with my new dog was not also staying at home all the time.
Right.
And so the little daily social stuff I had, in hindsight, was far more precious to me. Even though I was used to being home alone.
Oh, Christ, with my internet
tonight. Yep.
Goddamn internet. Goddamn internet. I apologize, everyone. Yeah, so you realized that it wasn't going to be quite as easy, sort of thing?
No, and then on top of that, my dog, I answered an ad. Family said they were breeding their dogs.
Right.
And they were going to have a litter. So I put my name on the list for the litter. Turns out to be a puppy mill dog. It was just a scam.
Oh.
And this dog had issues.
Oh,
I love this dog like crazy, but this dog had issues. The moment I'm not paying attention to her, she's destroying something. She needs that constant attention.
Right.
So I brought it. I never had to take a dog to a trainer before. So I took this one to a trainer. And none of the stuff that we were doing was fixing the behavior. And so she recommended someone who actually turned out to be retired. So I had to pay dearly to get this person out of retirement for my one dog. Meanwhile, at that point, she's already destroyed over like $1,000 worth of stuff in my apartment. I had to replace the couch I bought the previous year.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And ultimately, this trainer said, the only thing that will fix the behavior for this dog is time. Like, she'll have to mature.
Right.
But the best thing I can do, because it was driving me crazy. I mean, pandemic and a dog that's supposed to give me even keel is destroying everything the moment I try and work. So I had to find a new home for her with more people in it.
Makes sense.
That didn't need the quiet I needed.
Right. Yeah.
So I found friends of the family, 3 adults in the house, all the attention she wants. She's apparently thriving.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah.
So it was a heartbreak because I love this little girl.
Yeah, but, you did. You were all about your little puppy. I thought it was cute. I was like, look at cigar smoking, whiskey drinking Richard Pace and his little puppy. It's fucking adorable.
I mean, I had to replace all the wiring for my computer at one point.
Holy shit! It ate your computer?
Yeah. It chewed through my computer wiring overnight one night.
That's crazy. That's and unsafe. They could start a fire or some kind. Cats, man, get yourself a cat. Cats are where it's at, man.
I like cats. I've always been a dog person.
Right.
I love cats too. In the back of my head, I'm thinking that you've seen the stories where all the people are adopting dogs and cats during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I have a feeling that when it ends, a lot of people are going to go, "Oh, this is too much work."
Some might. And
it's like, and I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of dogs that are going to need homes.
Yeah, yeah.
In the summer, fall, especially when kids go back to school for real. So I'm going to keep an eye out for there. I might go after another dog then, just to make sure that no one's like lost in the Humane Society.
Oh, that's.
I think there's going to be a flood. I think there's going to be a flood of dogs.
Well timed.
But anyway, yeah. So
that's smart to think ahead. Yeah.
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 So the pandemic fucked with me hard. So
Anthony Ruckazer, Anthony Kingdom James, you know Anthony?
I do.
He adopted a little kitty, little Chloe, months ago, and that's been adorable because he is the last grumpy curmudgeon I would have ever expected to have gotten himself a cute little kitty cat, and he loves this thing. Like, he's always posting about the stupidest little stuff that he does with such excitement. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. You found love with your kitty. See, I had a Yorkie that I unfortunately had to put down like just over a year and a half, maybe ago, almost 2 years, just from age, just like everything went, she was in pain and I couldn't watch her suffer anymore. So at the time I had 3 cats and a dog and 2 kids and 2 adults in the house, right? And then I go through a bit of a life change where I go through the separation, and we're still living together for a while afterwards because everything was cool. When Aaron and I separated, it was, you've met Aaron, and it's super amicable. We're still like besties and stuff. But So we were, you know, still renting together. And so it was that for a while. And then I moved out, got my own place. But the dog had just passed away beforehand. So one of the cats I left behind in that house with them because, you know, it was more kind of their cat. And I brought my 2 cats here to my new apartment. And then like 3 weeks after I move in, one of those guys passes on. And he's like 17, and it was just old age again because all my animals are getting old because I've had them for almost 20 years. So I've gone from all those people in this environment to where it's now in me and 1 cat. And well, my son's here half the time. So half the time it's just me, my son, and this cat. And there were like 9 mouths to feed. So honestly, though, this 1 cat, I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have him to come home to every day, just to like, you know, feel like I'm coming home to something because I'm so used to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's like the weirdest thing about Rocket's behavior was she destroyed stuff when I was here not paying attention to her. She never destroyed anything when I was away at the gym. So the first few times where I was like leaving her, there's a lot of times I put her in the crate initially, but then she was good on then she was house trained essentially. So I'd come back and she'd be sitting in the same spot on my couch waiting for me. I'd be like, oh, that's great. And she'd be like so excited that I'm back. I'd play with her for a little bit. I'd make sure, you know, I'd take her for another walk, come back in, say, okay, time for me to go to work. And then I'd realize she's not in the studio with me. I have to go look for her and find out like what she's doing.
Oh man, she's a stubborn dog. She's not taking it well, eh?
Well, yeah, at the time it was, it's apparently certain dogs, when they go through the whole puppy mill process, it can really mess with their heads.
Right.
So
yeah.
they
Definitely.
I mean, this is a dog who did not want to walk on strange surfaces. She'd freak out leaving the apartment for the first time on a leash.
Right.
She'd freak. You wouldn't want to walk on that carpet. Everything in my apartment's parquet flooring.
Could have been inbred too, I guess. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And then walking on concrete versus asphalt both freaked her out. Just the color change freaked her out, apparently.
Weird.
Or the value change or whatever. So she didn't know what any surface was like. And when I told that to the older trainer, she said there's a very good chance the first time she was really out of her cage is when she was given to you.
Right. That's crazy, man. That's that's a trauma. You're being handed a ball of trauma, right? Like that's difficult. Okay. I want to get your perspective on something because we may have talked about this in the past, but not as in depth as we could right here. But I have a theory. Now, there's lots of wonderful comic book communities around. I've my toes in a few of them. Wonderful, amazing people all over the place, and they're all very unique and they're all different. When it comes to Toronto and Southern Ontario, I try to explain to people in other areas and places how unique it is here as far as the top tier quality caliber of artists who all live within, say, 2-3 hours of each other in Ontario. And because it's mind-bending, right? You know it is. If we sat here and went through the list from you to Leonard Kirk to Ken to Ty to literally we could sit here and name 40 fucking people to Fabok to Finch who are like 3 hours away. Like it's staggering. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that it's so incredibly unique in that way because of Toronto's artistic and cultural, I guess, environment over the years, where you've got this plethora of art available as far as education in like colleges and galleries and, you know, institutions. Like there's just art steaming out of every, you know, pore of every area of all the little cities around and stuff. And, you know, that's the only reason I could think of why you would have this abnormal amount of creators who have worked for the big two and who've worked for everybody within 3 hours of each other. Does that jive with you? Does that make sense with you? Because you're part of this. As you said, you're 53. You've seen a couple decades of this, you know, community and been part of it. So what's your perspective on that? Do you think I've come close to hitting the nail on the head?
I think you're close. I think there's a few things that you didn't bring in the context here. One thing is we are the largest city in Canada.
Right.
So just on gross population, if we're going to have a comics community of any density, the largest city in the country is going to be the one to have it.
Right.
The second thing is Toronto in the area has two of the leading art instruction schools in Canada with OCA and Sheridan.
Right.
So I was born and raised in Winnipeg. I came to Ontario for Sheridan, and I stayed because why the hell would I want to go back to Winnipeg?
Right. I didn't know you were born in Winnipeg. A bunch of your bios are wrong then, by the way.
Really?
Oh,
I
yeah.
usually say I was raised in the wastes of Canada by penguins or something like that.
Not ones you've done, but like the ones that other people have done peg you as being born in Toronto. I've seen one or two.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nope. Nope.
Get your
Nope.
shit
Born in
right,
Winnipeg.
internet.
Born in Winnipeg. Spent part of my childhood in Calgary.
Cool.
College beckoned when I was 18. Came out to Sheridan, and I went back one summer to Winnipeg. I was like, fuck this.
You're like,
and then I was done. I stayed in Ontario. I became a Toronto citizen.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I lived in Hamilton as well. That was interesting.
Yeah, that's where I've ended up. Well,
yeah.
that's coming around. You know, I moved here and I'm like Hamilton, right? It's got its reputation. And there's definitely parts of Hamilton that deserve that reputation. But I had no idea to the extent of the hiking and the environment as far as like war memorials and cool places to go. And
a lot of cool places there.
Didn't even realize it was like the waterfall capital. There's like waterfalls every 10 minutes to like go look at. So that was super cool. It's cool that you ended up in Toronto though, because you're obviously way more of like a Toronto city type guy than a fucking Winnipeg guy.
Yeah.
Do you think do you think that yeah.
Sorry. And the third thing, communities attract themselves. They have their own gravity.
Right.
So as soon as you actually have a somewhat noticeable community of people doing a certain thing, it attracts other people because you want to be attracted by other people from that community.
Yeah.
So as soon as you have like 12 or 15 people working in comics, and let's say you visit Toronto for a convention from, I don't know, Victoria, which may or may not have that strong community, you kind of go, well, geez, I want to hang out with other comics people. I'm going to go to Toronto. And there's that. Because I mean, I think that's the story with Kerry Nord. I mean, he was a Calgary artist. Now he's someone who actually feels like a Calgary person, if that makes sense.
No, because I don't know the Calgary person.
You always felt a little out of place in Toronto. Yeah. So he came out, then he went to Montreal, and I think he went back to Calgary. I think he might be going back to Montreal. I don't know. But I mean, there's certain people that want to be surrounded by people who do the same thing, and I understand that.
Yeah, and I think we're also crazy lucky here in that the creators we do have are so willing to pass it on. I mean, you know, like from like the earlier level, like, you know, there was all these people went to Sheridan, and like, you know, they come out and they're doing their thing, but then you've got like the boot camp. And when I talk to the next generation, like when I talk to a bit, and I don't want to call it the older generation because all y'all ain't necessarily all that old, but when I've talked to Jim Zub and stuff, right? Like people who've like been through the Sheridan experience, it seemed like that generation got set through that. And everyone else I've talked to in the next generation, not one of them hasn't been through the boot camp. Like not one of them hasn't taken at least one little course from Ty. You know what I mean? And it's just...
Well, there's kind of like a weird sideways story to that. You know about Max DeMutt, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I developed a comic book.
Right?
What?
Dave Ross is still teaching there, is he not? Or is he gone?
I think he's still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was hired to develop the comics program.
I think I knew this. Yeah, I think I knew this. Yeah.
And then I ran screaming from the school the second year. And it was hilarious. So I was coordinator of the program, and I butted heads with the people running the school because they clearly had no idea or respect for comics. They just wanted students to pay money.
Right.
And when I started fighting with them over what I thought was extant for the course for the students, they were like, oh, no, we don't want to put an effort into this.
Why are you doing it?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, some of the arguments were insane. But anyway, so I'm leaving. It's like they offered me a reduced role because they still wanted me there to promote me because I had comics background.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I can't defend what these students are paying for, I'm not going to be there.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, there was like they didn't have a history of comics program in the curriculum that I thought was there. They tried to teach them history of animation. I go, why are we teaching them history of animation? So they can take storyboarding. I went, storyboarding is not in the curriculum. Well, if they want to do storyboarding as a side gig, they need the history of animation as a prerequisite.
Why are you worrying about the side gig? Like,
I know,
they need the main
right?
gig first.
and I had already lost the fight to make. They wanted to do a children's book program. I said, okay, half semester overview of children's book illustration, but they managed to make it into a full semester thing in third year. And I'm like going, the only industry that fucks over artists more than comic books is children's books illustration.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah. So I ran screaming from this place, and I'm talking to Ty. He says, oh yeah, they tapped me. I'm going to be running it now. And I went, really? And I tell him what I went through. He says, oh, they won't do that to me. I'm Ty Templeton. Halfway through the semester. He was gone. He was gone. It's like, I'm going, you don't understand, Ty. They don't give a fuck about you.
Right.
Right? So I have no idea how Dave Ross has lasted this long.
I don't know. He must just love teaching or something. I do enjoy his book, the superhero drawing book he put out. There's some cool ideas in there for like a guy who's just like a layman hobby drawer like me, you know. So let's talk about your art a little bit.
I love teaching too, but I taught at Durham College after for a few years.
Oh yeah,
like 7 years, a few years.
Right.
The system for education is messed up as far as I can see it. I think I'd rather do it in an atelier type of environment where you teach the skill specific courses.
Right.
And if they don't pass it, they just take it again.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of like having years where you have to get everything in 3 years. Well, not everyone gets all the skills they need in 3 years. Sometimes they need 4 or 5.
Yeah. Not everybody's at the same rate for sure.
Yeah. And the schools that we have them set up now, they're money churn machines.
Right.
It's like, give the kids certain rubber stamp skills, get them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, no, the arts don't work that way.
Yeah, no education is specific enough, you know, like this, like I've had this interesting thing that unfolded, you know, my son's 10 years old and he's an absolute, like, just drawing freak. Like he just draws and draws and draws. That's all this kid does. If he's not playing video games or watching TikTok, he is drawing. Like it's not, I don't have to yell at my kid to go to bed at 2 in the morning because he's playing video games. I literally have to tell him to put his goddamn markers away and go to bed. Like he's just insatiable, which is great, right? Like far more motivated than I was as a kid. Especially nowadays, you've got the YouTube and the instructional videos, and the amount to motivate and teach them is crazy with the technology they have. So my kid he was on this pandemic, right? Like he's been back in school. I can't even keep track of when they've been in and out of school, but you know, the main first chunk where it was just months and months, he was home for whatever, 8-9 months straight. All he did was draw. And you can literally look at from when he started before the pandemic, and he was already pretty good, but where he is now is just like, I don't know if you've ever seen any of the stuff that I've posted of his. But this
you showed me some of his work last year, but you haven't followed through it anymore.
This kid is just like, I can't even believe how far he's come. And I know it's because he's literally had every day, all day to do nothing but work on the skills he wants to work on. And it's completely just showed me that, man, like these kids, we know earlier where people are adept to go in their lives. Like it's ingrained in us which areas we want to go into. And if we could just somehow restructure education to tap into that more, we could have things where this kid turns into an amazing artist within 9 months. Cause that's you know, he has so much time to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's our education system is derived from a process to make workers, not people, but
Right.
workers.
Absolutely. Agreed.
And we are now, as a civilization, at least Western civilization, we recognize that everyone's an individual, but we're not willing to dismantle and rebuild the institutions we built before we recognize that individuality. There's a complete serious disrespect of the individual in any institution that we have extant.
Mm-hmm.
The individual doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's you.
Right.
And you're talking about yourself, right?
Right. Yeah.
No school wants to deal with, they hate problem kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was one, I wasn't like a problem in terms of like, you know, violence or anything. Well, I did have fights, but I was always the one who asked questions that the teachers didn't really want to answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and they hate kids like that. And if a kid's getting bullied, they don't want to deal with the kid getting bullied.
Yeah.
That's too much work.
Yeah.
So they put that in a process, no touching.
Yeah.
Well, how does that stop kids from being bullied? The bullies get away with it.
Right. Yeah.
Everything's designed to ignore the individual as much as possible.
Yeah. It's neat. I have a good friend who's a social worker in the school system. And from what I've gathered from our conversations is how little help you get from the whole rest of the structure. You know, like how often the parents aren't as involved as they should be, or the communication has broken down between like parents and kids to an extent that so often the counselor is the only one listening, and they can only do so much. And, you know, I know she cares, and I know she, you know, really cares about these kids and does what she can, but to a certain extent, you have to be given the tools to do so. And a lot of it is just passing off. Like a lot of teachers or whatever, or parents are like, oh, they're seeing your counselor, so that's enough. But it just not necessarily like that, you know? So, yeah.
Well, there's also, I mean, sorry to cut you off,
No.
but when I was teaching, especially at Durham, I ended up being, I'd be the only one in first year who'd fail students.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone essentially rubber stamped the kids in first year at
Right.
Durham in the animation and games program. It's like, well, they showed up, they did enough work to pass, we'll pass them in the second year. I'd be like, they didn't do the work, F, right?
Yeah.
And the administration wasn't particularly fond of my doing that. But I was approaching it from the mindset, if they can't do my curriculum, there's no way they're going to work in the studio professionally. There's no way they're going to be able to do a job here. So for every year I was teaching there and there was a parent-teacher meeting with the staff because the student was failing, I'd explain to them, this is how we did the course. They had to do a small assignment every week. And if they didn't do it, they got a chance to redo it or at a reduced mark. And they only failed my class if they just didn't make the effort.
Right.
So if they can't make the effort here, this is clearly not for them. So why throw more of your limited resources as a parent into getting your kid an education in a career they're not going to succeed
and
at?
wasting time in your life, right?
Like you're the kid's life.
You're making a good argument for kind of a case of where, you know, I think maybe with the younger kids, you could just have, you know, teachers, and I'm not saying this to disrespect teachers in any way. I know how difficult their job can be, but as far as even the education of teachers, say, you know, little kids, you know, most teachers who teach, you know, certain grades and lower are specifically kind of trained for that, you know, area. But it's almost like, say, high school, it'd be better to have a teacher who has had to do. You know what I mean? Like if you want to be a teacher in something, you should have an apprenticeship or a certain amount of time in that field that you're teaching. Like say, if you're even a math teacher, you should have to spend a certain amount of time doing whatever kind of equations all day in a lab or whatever kind of job you would get out of math. You know what I mean? Like it just makes a lot more sense. Cause I talk to guys like you who are guys who've lived in the industry. It's like, sure, I can teach you to make all the great art in the world, but how are you going to sell that art? How are you going to move that art? How are you going to eat off that art? How are you going to
either in art school? Art schools are almost a joke. They don't teach professional practices.
Right? No.
No, I had to learn how to do my own taxes. I had to learn how to negotiate on my own. I had to learn
Right.
how to invoice on my own. I had to learn how to find clients on my own. I
Yeah.
mean, they had this bullshit thing where it's like, we're going to help you put together a mailer, and here's a list of people to mail stuff to. And when I got down to it, about a third of those businesses didn't exist anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I was the one who stumbled across Artist Market. I bought like the art. I don't think they make it anymore. But it's like I found one remainder from the previous year in like my second year of college, and I brought it into class, and everyone's like looking at this, go, what is this? Well, this tells you what certain markets are there for artists.
Right.
And they're like, oh. And when the profs goes, oh yeah, you should get that.
Yeah. You got to give kids a good idea of what's coming. Like as an arborist, you know, the Humber offers a 2-year arborist course. So basically, you get a job for a company, and then students would go to school, and it's I think like is it 6-month course, once a year for 2 years or whatever, however they do it. And then you go back to work and work for the summer. And we'll get these kids who come out of school, you know, these fresh 20-year-old kids who show up at a tree company, and, you know, they think they've learned or done well and got a good grade. So they're like, well, where's my belt? And I need this kind of belt, and I need this chainsaw, and I need this rope, and I need this. And I do want to do these kind of trees and stuff. You know what the first thing I say to them is, here's your rake. Get to fucking know it, because this is your life for the next year. You know, like, I'm sorry, you're 20, you're not going anywhere near a tree till you can prove to me that you can rake. And, you know, a lot of these kids, they'll have spent all that time in school and literally worked for me for a week or two and quit, and like just quit the industry because they had no idea what the actual industry was going to be like, and it just crushed them, you know. And that quickly too, right?
I mean, it's when I actually, because now I kind of do coaching, art coaching on the side.
Like a tutoring kind of thing?
Yeah, kind of like a tutoring thing. I've coached people in storytelling and anatomy and stuff like that.
Right on.
And some of them, like some parents approached me, and after my first Zoom call with their kid, the kid said, yeah, I don't think I want to be an artist. So I tell them the truth. I mean, if you can't draw an hour every day, 5-6 days a week, there's no way in hell you're going to draw 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week.
What are they thinking that they're going to be in for, right? Like, if it's your job, you work an 8-hour job, you're going to draw for 8 hours. Does that not make automatic sense? Like, if people aren't even cluing into that sort of thing, you know, it's like.
Yeah. And it's weirdly enough, I mean, it's like under perfect situations, like pre-pandemic, I could easily do 10 to 12 hours in the studio 7 days a week, not sweat it, because I do things outside of it. Right.
Yeah.
This pandemic year, with all the other stress and everything else going on, there were days where it's like I couldn't draw. I literally couldn't draw because I couldn't focus at all. It's work to get into the zone to work, right? And and this is something I love to do, and it's what I've pursued my entire life. And if it becomes hard for me in certain situations, someone who says, well, I can't even do an hour.
God.
Because, you know, I got to watch the latest anime, or I got the new video game came out, so I'm not going to draw for a month.
Right.
All right. I mean, it's like, and I still fight through all that stress and stuff to still get to draw. Right.
Yeah.
But if they're just going to like blow it off, well, then it's not it might be something they're good at, but just because you're good at it doesn't mean it's something you're going to do. I mean, what's that line from, I think it's Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Just because you got a big dick doesn't mean you have to do porn.
Right.
So some of these kids, I go, just because you enjoy drawing once in a while doesn't mean it's something you're going to want to do every day of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's like, so I tell these kids, it's like, okay, so if you're drawing something you're not enjoying, is it because you don't enjoy drawing, or is it what you're drawing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I had to make, and I think you're the first media person I'm telling this to. So I'm backing away from Second Coming a bit.
Okay.
And I think it became more apparent because of the pandemic, because Second Coming is a very particular sort of book.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was actually going way back to the start of it. The Vertigo editor asked me if I was interested in drawing. He said, would you be interested in drawing a new version of Preacher?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Second Coming's nothing like that.
Not at
Nothing
all.
like that.
Not at all.
I would say, as far as genres, I think Second Coming is almost like the perfect incarnation of a sitcom in comic book form.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm not a sitcom artist.
Right.
I mean, I can take Mark's script. I can look at his comic beats, like comedic beats, I should say, and I can break them down a little bit better than he can because I understand the visuals better. And I see the world in a certain way. But after a certain point, I've done that enough that I'm not pushing myself. And in the second arc, as good as it is, it's hilarious. It's actually, in many ways, it's much funnier than the first arc. All the challenge for me in terms of like interpreting Mark's scripts is gone. There's some nice design challenges that come up,
right?
In terms of certain characters, and I love doing the covers. Covers are going to be a perpetual challenge because, I mean, like for this arc, I did the split covers with like the image across the top and bigger image at the bottom. So I'm looking forward to doing something different with the next arc.
Right.
But so going forward, starting with the next issue, I'm just doing the layouts and covers for Second Coming.
Okay.
I got to draw monsters, man.
I hear you. But also, like, it's this attitude that gets you to where you are as far as skill level. And as we were saying, like, if you want to draw 1 hour a day, like, say, okay, maybe you're good enough to like pass off something by drawing half a day, but do you just want to get by and have that as your job? Or do you want to get really fucking good at this, you know? Because you've spent years getting really fucking good at this. And you know, one of the things that I enjoy about your work is that it is varied, and you are not just a comic book artist. You know, you're all, not all over the place, but you know, I feel like
I have been.
You know, yeah, but I mean, your free
I've
form nudes and your sketching and your inking, and you know, you've got these little areas that you can tell that you're really passionate about working on these, you know, this handful of different styles that you like to develop. And there's a few guys like that, but not many, you know, and you really stick out as one of those guys.
Well, I think there's more. I think if you look at the totality of like commercial artists, you'll find more. Like there's lots of people who work in games who do what I do. There's lots of people who work in animation who do what I do. Like they keep their fingers in traditional media. They still do life drawing. They do plein air painting. They do all these things. They experiment with different media, and I think that's kind of like an artist disease. To be honest, I've had friends who've only done comics, and at the end of the day, they just put it aside and they're done being an artist for the day. And I don't. And it's not a knock on them at all, but I don't understand that because I'm just not built that way.
Right.
When I'm doing something for fun, it's usually art related.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's like I love art so much that my playtime's art.
Well, you do. You'll bang off stuff that, you know, you'll be like, I drew this for fun. And it's like, what do you mean that was for fun? And how did you do that in a night? You'll bust out these ink drawings, man, that, you know, look like they would take like days or at least like hours, like huge sessions to sit down. But I know that you work all day, so there's no way that you spent more than half an hour inking out this Frankenstein that you wanted to draw, or whatever old school movie character you chose to draw that day, right? Like
I'm sure it took more than an hour. But,
when you how long like do you have and give yourself for those sketches we see online that are just, you know, the ones you felt like doing because you sparked an idea in your head?
Well, I haven't done that many last year between the food bank project and work.
Right.
And there wasn't much time for that. So luckily the food bank filled a large niche for that. But
say like those holidays, like if it's Halloween and you're like, you know, I like say you've done like a Bela Lugosi or something, you're like, hey, it's Halloween. And then you'll put up this picture that you just drew just because it's Halloween that day. Yet it looks better than half the pros out there could do. It's insane.
Well, well, I guess this is why I'm peeling back in Second Coming. I want to be drawing something that I feel is the challenge to me at the time. And for that, it means I always saw myself as a writer artist.
Right.
Right. To really tell this in the most disjointed way I can. So I always saw myself as a writer artist. The people that inspired me were writer artists: Howard Chaykin, Frank Miller, Alan Moore. A lot of people forget he's an artist too. Those are the people that really speak to me because the way they write visually. They tell their stories with the imagery. I still think probably the greatest collaboration between a writer and an artist was the most seamless, and that was probably Electra Assassin.
Okay.
Whereas Bill started just experimenting in response to the script he got from Frank, and Frank saw what he got from Bill and said, "Oh, I'm going to run with this ball." Right? I think there's a pure sense of collaboration between those two. So I need to be writing again, and I need to be drawing what I write again. Because my sense of storytelling is driven as much by visual imagery as dialogue or narrative conjunctions. So
you know what you can see it into?
Yeah,
sorry, you can see it in your post descriptions. Because if it is like Halloween or something and you put up like a Bella or Frankenstein or something, you put a nice paragraph up with some little tidbit like, this person used to draw this because they admired that, or they like to do this style, so I and then there's your picture. And I love reading those little blurbs that you add up there. You give it a little bit of context, right?
Well, there's the reason Instagram allows you to write that shit.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
People want to read it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm so I finished up my commitment to this arc of Second Coming. I have 2 horror stories I'm writing for an upcoming Kickstarter. I'm not running it; other people are running it.
Cool.
But they're doing I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it, like what name it is yet, because they haven't announced it. But I'm writing a story for another artist I really appreciate, and I'm writing and drawing a story I'm doing. And I believe did I tell you about my murder mystery set in hell?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. I'm putting the pitch package together for that now.
Oh, that's finally happening. Dude, that was yeah. People are gonna like that shit. You laid that out for me in Chicago, man. That was I'm really excited for that stuff, man. And like, okay, I don't even know what to ask about this, but I needed to touch on it because of all your art. I love all your art. All your art's amazing, and I love all your art styles. They all, you know, and I'm being a little biased here. You know how everybody's got those artists who hit their own, you know, you hit that button for whoever, right? You're just one of those artists who hit my button, you know, and because of your style, right? You got your finger on my button, Richard. It's the inking, man. But it's the inking. Your inking is insane to me, and I've always loved inking. I was always a kid drawing with ink pens. I still love to ink lines. You know, that's a lot of the conversations that I got close to be buddies with Mark McKenna was about, you know, as he's just a legend of an inking warhorse when it comes. I think he's inked over 12,000 Marvel pages or some
sounds about right.
Ridiculous fucking number, right? And I just love it. And so I don't really know what to ask about it, but why are you so good at it? Like, you obviously love it too, right? Like it's something that sticks out. So what is it about it that you love? What is the passion for inking that you are often drawn to that particular act?
All right. Okay. So I think the first artist that really knocked my socks off with their pen and ink work was Frank Frazetta. And for a while, I tried to ink like him, but it wasn't quite fitting. That kind of smooth, almost Al Williamson, super slick kind of thing wasn't working. But I'd also, around the same time, saw Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein, which immediately led me to Booth,
Mm-hmm.
the illustrator that influenced Wrightson's work on that. But then I was in a bookstore looking at used books, trying to find Booth books, and they said, have you ever heard of Joseph Clement Call, C-O-L-L, who's another illustrator who also, I think he was actually concurrent to Booth. Now, his pen and ink work was sketchy, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always had a very loose hand with my inks. As soon as you start doing, I can do the precision, but it takes me forever, right?
Yeah.
But I could draw really quickly with pencil, and it have this wonderful life to it, and then I'd kill it as soon as I tried to do traditional style inking. So I saw this Joseph Clement Call's work, and I kind of went, oh my God, that's it. But it looks nothing at all like superhero ink. Nothing at all. Right?
Right.
It's this classic illustrators magazine type hyper rendered solid blacks, let things pull out, scratch out the black and get it work.
Yeah.
In terms of, you're familiar with Jorge Zafino?
Sounds familiar, but no, fill me in.
His son Gerardo Zafino works in a very similar style to him. He's also done a lot of work for Marvel recently, covers primarily. Incredible, rich black and white work.
Right.
That's the work that really sparks me. And I also love it when work looks like it's observed as opposed to I still appreciate like the super slick inking like Mark Farmer over Alan Davis or something like that. But that's a skill in and of itself. It doesn't look naturalistic. It looks like a commercial line process.
Right.
You get that super slick line, that super slick cross hatching. And I want my work to look like, oh yeah, he was there and he drew that while this was happening.
Yeah.
And that's that's what I try and go for. I mean, everything. I mean, so when the deadline's insane, you can't do it. Yeah. It takes as long, if not longer, to do that kind of like caught at the moment drawing as the precision inking that you would see for classic superheroes.
Right, because you're on a mission. You're like, this line needs to go there, where you're more feeling it. That's the thing. Like, I think I love looking at your art because I feel how much fun you had doing it. Yeah, you know, like I almost want to take my hand and like trace your shit because it just like it looks like it's fun. You know,
it's a little bit like I'm drawing with values more than actually using the line to describe. I approach my comic book pages very differently from a lot of other artists because I'll throw up pages that look too posed.
Right.
Right. I mean, if it looks like, oh, everything is too clean or something, or it just looks like comic art, I'll throw it out. And then I'll redraw it or re-ink it actually.
Okay.
And yeah, and just to make it feel more organic. And my coloring process is similarly weird, where it's like I see things in terms of values and textures.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't particularly care about the color per se. I care about the interaction of colors.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's probably more from like studying fine art in the classic sense, not like Mondrian or
right. No, but yeah, but like natural
but like the
art,
way
yeah.
The people that John Singer Sargent, the way he had approached painting, or Andrew Wyeth or people like that. Even though they were illustrators, they were taking all the knowledge they learned from like centuries of oil painters.
Right.
So I'll be applying that to my work. Which means my work's going to look strange compared to like what your top 10 superhero artist is because it
right. But
so
that's what's great. But that's what you want, That's kind of like a door that McFarlane busted open when he came out. That's why when all of us 13-year-olds first saw Spider-Man 298 and 297, I think it was, where Chance was on the cover, and it was the first two McFarlane covers for Spider-Man, and it was that villain Chance, and all of us were like, why the fuck does Spider-Man have barbed wire coming out of his wrists? And we literally thought when we saw that first cover, like it must be part of the story. Something must have happened where Spider-Man has barbed wire webs. And we were like, that is badass. And then it was never addressed. And we're like, oh, that's how this crazy fucker is just drawing him now with these giant eyes and these thick, like inked lines. And, you know, I love that stuff. Have you ever heard of an artist named Ryan Lee?
Yeah.
You have? Okay, great. Yeah, he's Michigan there. He's one of my favorite too, man. His inking and his stipling and just the originality of the characters that he's drawn. You should check out his Instagram because it really is. He's the trippiest guy for an ink artist. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know anybody else who takes ink and uses it psychedelically like this guy, you know? And I love when people do that. And Katie Sawatsky, you know, she's absolutely. So I love that stuff. It's just candy for my eyes. You know what I mean? So
what you described with McFarlane coming on the scene, that was Sienkiewicz when I first saw him.
Right. Okay.
When I came to the direct market just as Bill was going on to New Mutants.
Okay.
So I'd probably seen his work on newsstand on Dazzler covers or something.
Right.
But I was coming into comics at that point, right around that point. I think it was right around within the few months of him starting New Mutants, and I saw it, and everyone else is raving about John Byrne. I'm going, yeah, he's good. He's clearly good. But I would be looking at like Walt Simon and go, this guy's a god. And you're like,
how long after did you get on New Mutants? Or no, you weren't on New Mutants. You were on New Warriors, right? Yes.
Yeah, that was years later. I mean, we're talking mid 80s versus early 90s.
Yeah. It's cool because then you know Marcus as well, right? Marcus Toe.
Yeah, we've met a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, and then because a while after that, he was on. He had a really good run that I had a few friends who were a big fan of his New Warriors run.
I think it was after. Okay, I think it was Volume 2 of New Warriors.
Yeah, it was one of the newer ones because things were switched up a bit, but people were big fans. Did I lose it again? I lost it again. Goddamn internet. At least you're pretty to look at during those brief pauses. All right. Here's we gotta talk about something that I'm a little bit embarrassed about because Richard, I consider you a friend, and just as a friend, I should have fixed this by now. But I have not yet read The Doom That Came to Gotham. And
you're not finding
it. That's it, right? Like, yeah. Fuck. So as a writer, you not only have been part of the blessed stable of individuals who have gotten to work on the fucking Bat, but you have written an official, like not in the line, but you've written a Batman story for DC. This is crazy. So what is that book about exactly? Because I can't fucking find it.
All right. So I was supposed to do a Hellboy one-shot with Mike Mignola.
Right.
And Mike Richardson took him aside and said, Mike, you know, you got around 12 people doing Hellboy one-shots, and you're not producing your Hellboy comics fast enough for you not to be outnumbered by everyone else. So Mike went, oh, fuck. Awesome. And he cut all the other non-him Hellboy projects.
Oh.
That was fine. I understood the reason, perfectly valid reason, and it makes sense because if suddenly everyone else is drawing Hellboy, then he's no longer the definitive Hellboy guy.
Right.
So I said, well, I have this idea. What if H.P. Lovecraft created Batman? And I faxed him over like 2-page outline, and Mike loved it. And he said, well, let me reach out to Archie, who was handling all the Elseworld stuff. And so he basically did a quick rewrite of my 2 pages, which was almost identical, but added some Mike bits. And DC loved it. And I was supposed to draw it, but I ended up, Archie Goodwin passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought the book was dead. So I went and did other stuff. Then I think like 4 months later, another editor came on board. So I jumped back working on this. I went, all right, this is happening. And then he left DC. So I went, well, this book is dead for good. So I wandered off. I did some other work. Then Mike Carlin got the book, and he was an absolute prick. Yeah, I don't like him. He comes on, he looks
Tell
at
us how you feel.
I only did like 12 pages, finished, and I had 12 pages that were penciled. And when I thought it was dead, I let DC know. I said, well, I here's another 12 pages. Maybe you should pay me for them, thinking that was it. Right. I didn't want to be on the hook for 12 pages. So they paid me for pages that technically weren't done. But so Mike's looking at the first 12 pages. Oh, these are good. These are good. And then he suggested an anchor, which would have been wholly inappropriate, cranking over me. He would have just, it would have been like, that type of change. Like I was like doing like super tightly rendered pencils, right? Like lots and lots of fine art. This guy would come in with like a big number 6 brush and just get rid of them all. This is shortly after my son was born. And so my life was like really, really full all of a sudden. And then I had a blood clot form behind my eye.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was terrible. And Mike was like, you need to give me this many pages or you're fired. And then I had the blood clot thing. I'm like, fuck it. I want to be fired.
Right.
And then, and this is great. So the phone call where Mike fires me after I tell him I quit, he starts ragging on how bad my first pages were. And I'm like, okay, you know what I've just kind of gone through and you're shitting on me. That's fine. So I have no time for someone who's going to kick someone when they're like going through shit.
Yeah, that's not nice. And
I was perfectly happy with Troy Nixie coming on board to draw it. Better choice than I was, actually. Yeah, that's my Doom the Kindergarten. And the book has a very different ending than I would have given it.
What's it about? I haven't been able to read it.
Oh, sorry. What if H.P. Lovecraft created Batman? That's pretty much it.
It's got to be a little bit more to the plot. Like,
oh, do you not
just
know
fighting Cthulhu, or like what's going on?
Sort of. What I ended up doing is my initial pitch document. I paralleled all the Batman villains to like Lovecraftian variations.
Okay.
The book starts with Bruce Wayne going to Antarctica to find a missing expedition, the Cobblepot expedition.
Cool.
And they find like some giant mutated penguins. They find the guy who's dead, but he's frozen and he's still operating. It's Mr. Freeze. He's trying to free some sort of monstrosity, but Bruce Wayne brings him back to Gotham. Alone, standing in the wilds, naked, surrounded by these mutant penguins, is Cobblepot, but they don't see him, so they leave him behind. I mean, it's just
cool,
weird
man.
shit like that. Gets the Gotham, Killer Croc's in there, but he's actually like a crocodile reptilian monster, like a deep one. Ra's al Ghul is like some sort of eternal ancient spawn of the old ones.
Shit, this sounds rad.
Two-Face gets turned into like a gate to allow Ra's al Ghul to summon elder beings into the world.
Okay.
And there was like bits like Green Arrow in this was like some sort of weird kind of like anti-Cthulhu cultist. He had his own belief about certain things. So he had these magic arrows, the arrows that pierced Saint Sebastian, who was killed by arrows. So he had the arrowheads from there, and he made his own arrows, and they're apparently divinely infused to kill demonic presences and stuff. So I came up with all this shit, and Mike rehashed it, and at the end of it, he turned Batman into Man-Bat so he could fight the older god stuff.
That's cool, man. I gotta get my
a lot of people love it.
I wonder if it's digital. You think they've got it like in the DC
I'm pretty sure it's on Comixology.
Okay, I might just get in there and read it there then.
Yeah. I think there were some copies left in storage, but then the whole diamond thing happened.
Holy crap! You know, did you hear? You've obviously heard the latest. It just happened like a day or two ago. Marvel's like, you're not primary no more. Oh, goddamn, things have changed, eh?
Well, it's a case of I used to have to explain to people why the exclusive situation with Diamond was bad for comics.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, we've been swimming in these waters since the early 90s. So people just don't know what it was like before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, before when there was like 20 or 30 distributors.
Yeah.
And there was all these overlapping distribution areas. And distributors had to over-order in case a book got hot. So even for mediocre selling books, there'd be like a 10, 12% cushion of overorders at the distributor level.
Right.
Just in case. What if the next Stephen Platt's on this book, right? I want to have like an extra 100 copies to sell. And of course, back in those days, since the monthlies were the bread and butter for comic shops, they overordered just in case.
Right. Yeah.
So as soon as Marvel, and this is going back, when Marvel basically said, screw this, we're tired of it being a competition, we're going to buy a distributor. None of them thought, shit, if we wipe out the distribution situation we have now, that 10 to 15% of over orders is gone. That's 10 to 15% of your direct profit as a publisher is gone.
Yeah, it's silly.
And not only that, when that happened, a lot of stores who were carrying credit with distributors, and those distributors went out of business, right?
Yeah.
Those are disappearing sales, because whenever a comic shop closes, apparently somewhere around 40% of the customer base stops buying its product.
Like, period. They don't even go to like another shop. They just stop collecting.
Well, if you look at the bigger map of North America where all the distribution was going on, while there may have been overlapping distributors, there weren't a lot of shops. I think the most at one point was like 2,500 shops across North America.
Yeah. Even when I was a kid. Yeah.
And most of them would be in big cities.
Mm-hmm.
So if you lived in, I don't want to pick on any city, but if you lived in a smaller town that was on the satellite of a city, if you had a comic shop, it was the only one.
Right.
And if that went out of business, you got no other recourse for comics anywhere.
Well, at the time, up until I was 12, I didn't discover comic shops till I was like 12, 13 years old. And I've been buying comics off the convenience store rack for years before that. That's where I bought my Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure I bought Spider-Man 300 from Bostock Convenience in Mississauga. Like, wow. I didn't get it from a comic shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when I started getting into comics in the mid '80s, it was a comic shop. Now in Winnipeg, you think Winnipeg is butt nowhere. It had Comic World, Book Fair. The guy who owned Joe Krolik owned the distribution, and he owned 2 stores in Winnipeg. There was like 5 or 6 stores in Winnipeg.
That's pretty good.
Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the problem was outside of Winnipeg, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Right? Literally nothing. Apparently, there weren't any other, all the others. And so Joe Krolik's Styx Distributor, Styx Comics, that was the name of the store. He owned a distribution company, and a big chunk of his distribution was to North Dakota. Because of his location, it was easier for him to distribute comics to the northern U.S. states in the central area than it was for another distribution company to open there.
Even with cross-border.
They would drive comics south of the border. They would cross the border with comics that were printed in Montreal.
Yeah.
Dropped off at Styx by a truck or train or whatever, and they'd load up a van and it'd hit. I think they had 2 vans that drove across the border to make sure they had their Wednesday comics.
And that's back when it was truly free. That's when it was like, I remember my grandpa and I would go across. Well, I lived in St. Catharines. So for anybody who doesn't know, it's near Niagara Falls. So right near the border. So we went across the border so often, we could just call it going over the river.
Yeah.
So if we were going to go, whatever, school shop in the spring, you'd wear your crappy clothes over the river and you'd go and buy your new stuff, put it on, throw your other shit out. But I remember they didn't even have to show like a driver's license. At most, they had to show a driver's license, right? You didn't need a passport or nothing, just to hop over to Buffalo and buy some cheesies,
Yeah.
It's such a different world, man.
Very different.
Yeah. Who knows where it's going to go, how it's going to turn out. It's going to be fucking interesting. Like, do you think even if cons come back, it'll be the same?
They're going to come back and they're going to be mostly the same. Like, they're already announcing like summer and fall shows. I'm not entirely sure they're going to happen this year.
I don't know.
I talked to my art rep and he doesn't think he's doing any shows this year. And if he's not going, I'm not going to go.
Right. Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. It just becomes awkward. So initially I was thinking of going to New York because I love New York.
But we even be allowed to go, right? Like, who knows when that border is going to open?
Well, the U.S. is going to be fully vaccinated before we are.
Which is just for Canada to be, I think it was 66th in vaccines like a week ago. For us to be 66th in anything is one of the most disgraceful things I've ever felt about this country. Like,
well,
I mean, ordered more vaccines than anybody else. How did this happen? Right? Did we? I feel like we just got bullied
rid of our
out of
domestic production. We got rid of our domestic production.
It's yeah.
I mean, and it was like a partnership of the Conservatives doing one company and the Liberals doing the other. I mean, it's the Liberals did it back when, back in the 80s during the Reagan Thatcher era. The directive was get the government out of everything because the government wrecks everything.
Yeah.
Because that was just what they were selling everyone. I mean, so we sell, Petro-Canada becomes private, Air Canada becomes private. Our biggest government-owned pharmaceutical company is actually a partnership between the Canadian government and a university, and that gets sold. I think that was Trudeau. And then years later, the Conservatives sold the other one. So we had, and not only did they sell it, they didn't like put any strings saying, well, you got to keep some manufacturing here in Canada. It just all went away.
Yeah. Even hydro, right? Yeah.
And now, decades later, we kind of realize, it's kind of good to keep the government owning some of these businesses.
Right.
But, the government can't get Petro-Canada back. The government can't get Air Canada back.
No.
It's too late.
Yeah.
We could set up a new company, but that would be hella expensive.
Oh my God.
I think, okay, now this was a story in the springs of last year, so I don't know if it's happening now. In response to our situation and the fact that we're so reliant on European importation of vaccines, because Trump said no vaccines get sent out of the U.S. till we got full capacity.
Right.
I think Trudeau is investing in. It's going to take years, but we're in about 5 years we're going to have domestic vaccine production again.
Yeah, I heard that's on the ball. I've heard that started where they're actually going to build a fucking place where we can actually medicate ourselves. It's so ridiculous.
Well, and just the fact people are going, why don't we just do it now? I say, how do you do it now? It takes 5 years to build those kind of facilities.
Oh yeah, those facilities.
It takes at least a year to design them.
You don't just throw up a building and throw some microscopes and fucking vials in there. It's there's a little more that has to go into these incredibly
there's the energy supply. There's the
the environmentals of the building have to be probably so well monitored in those situations. And these kind of freezers they use, this shit is fucking expensive. Just
and shit the energy. I mean, they're literally. It might have to build a power plant specifically for that type of facility.
Right. Yeah. And then there's a whole other I mean, it takes them 8 months to pave a road in this province. You think they're just going to throw up a vaccine making facility like it's fucking nothing, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's nonsense. Richard, it's always such a pleasure hanging out and talking to you, man. I've missed you. Thank you so much for hanging out. I can't wait till we can bump elbows again and have a pint somewhere. I'm glad we got to spend that time in Chicago together, man, because that was the last of it. So at least we were kind of privileged enough to be at the last big ass one that went down, right?
Well, I think 2022 is going to be a lot better.
I hope so. I personally this year, I don't want to say I've given up, but I'm just putting it out of mind as far as if there's going to be shows, if there's going to be anything. So I'm going to work this year. This is going to be my savior, I figure, because we've got really good weather, right? My phone started ringing for tree work like 3 weeks earlier than it usually does, and it's blown up, and I've got like ridiculous amounts of work to do. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the year to where I have no pressure. I'm going to live a very simple life where I work and I pay down whatever debt I have, and just make that my year. And then maybe next year, if things come back, we'll see what happens, and we can get back on that Source Point conquering Canada train and see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing here. I mean, so I know that the next arc or Second Coming is going to be starting shortly, actually.
Right.
So I'll have covers and layouts to do there. But in the interim, I'm going to be working on Law of the Damned and getting that going. So that means I'll have Second Coming and assuming I find a home for it, another project to push in 2022.
That's exciting, man. You've got a few things on the table. And seriously, people, the pitch that he was telling me about, is there a name for it? What did you call it? Did you have a name for it yet?
Yeah, well,
are you allowed not? Don't say it if you're not allowed.
My murder in hell. It's right now. It's called Law of the Damned.
Oh right, yes, but it's a cool idea, man. And the visuals, the way you were describing it, it's fucking, it's gonna look sick. And we still will have to rope you in at some point when you have the time, and get a Source Point Press variant title out of you, variant cover out of you at some point, and we can make that happen. Are you familiar with Graham Miserak? Graham Miserak. He does a book called Yuki versus Panda.
No, I don't know it.
And it's a Canadian book. He's an Oakville guy. And he's got like 4 volumes of this book out over the years. And it's really popular here. It's been super popular here, enough that he's made 4 volumes, big Kickstarters. So it's always been known in Ontario and Canada. And Source Point has picked it up. So it's going to be going out. And we got Jeremy Clark, fellow Canuck Jeremy Clark, on there doing a variant cover for a shop out in the States. So you know me, man, I'm trying to infuse as much Northern talent into the entity that is Source Point Press as I can. Just because, you know, I'm proud of what we got, man.
Maple syrup makes everything better.
Right? It makes everything sweeter, man. Awesome. Richard, stay safe, be well. And thank you for being a positive, sensible, reasonable voice during this whole thing. Because you've always stood up for, you know, what's right and what's justice, but you've never let yourself get drawn into it. You know, I've seen you have debates, I've seen you have conversations, I've even seen you get a little, you know, riled up, but I've never seen you lose your fucking cool. And I've never seen you take it away from being an actual, like, factual debate. You know, it never gets to name calling with you. And I appreciate that. I appreciate your feed, and you brighten my day when I see your pretty pictures online. So everybody get online and follow Richard, because if you only know Richard for his actual published work, you don't understand how much shit you're missing out on. Because he's constantly exercising different areas of art and sharing it with us, and it's super cool. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate you, Richard.
My pleasure, man.
Good times, kids. Oh, we definitely are gonna. Super good times, kids. That is all we are gonna have this week on An Elegant Weapon. So please take it easy.
Take care.
And I will remind you all that this beautiful Jamaican rock and roll that you hear behind us, that's the Slackers. Beautiful music for your friends. Go to Bandcamp or Spotify and look up the Boss Harmony Sessions, and you will find the Slackers. Beautiful music for our friends, but until then, stay safe, be cool, and like I say, take it ace.